What if I could tell you that I know for a fact Ethereum will not be used on a massive scale by banks, and I can prove it to you without a shadow of a doubt, 100%. Ethereum, because of its gas fees, cannot be used by most banks. Most big banks won't use a public version of Ethereum, and there's multiple reasons why. I'm going to touch that and several other amazing topics in this video. Darren Moore Jr. found this video that he put on one of his videos the other day. I want to give him credit, and I went digging because I had to watch this full video in its entirety. It's Tony McLaughlin and it's Roy Ben-Hur, but you're not going to hear from Roy, but he's on the stage. I wanted to give him a shout out, even though I'll never talk to this guy. But Tony McLaughlin is he's head of emerging payments and business development at Citibank. Okay, and we just saw this big announcement from Ryan Rugg about Citibank using a private version of Ethereum and doing all of this testing for interbank transfer between Citibank and Citibank using tokenized settlement and things like that. All right, this is a gold mine, and there's so much here. I hope you're going to stick with me through this video, guys, because it's one beautiful thing after another. And I'm going to pause it when I can. I'm going to fill you in on some of these more key terms. I bring up CLS, which is a new financial market utility. It's like the DTCC, it processes payments here in the United States. But he gets into Ethereum, he gets into permission blockchains. There's so much good information here. So let me shut up. Let's start playing this, and let's start digging through this together so we can identify what technologies are these banks going to want to adopt, and what technologies do they need to stay away from due to counterparty risk. All right, you ready? Let's get into it. Guys, I'm Robert Doyle. If you found this channel, it's your first time, welcome. We talk about crypto. We try to bring all the facts out and try to figure out where we're going here in the future. If you like this channel, guys, if you like this content, please feel free to subscribe. If you want to support the channel, there's multiple ways to do that down in the description. I won't bore you with it. Let's get into it.
But short of sovereign governments going down the China route, which a lot of them don't seem to be willing to do, can sovereign governments actually prevent it? Or we heard on the earlier panel the idea of there being a twin-track financial system, and can they actually stop it? And or else, I guess to phrase it another way, in order to stop it, they need to create something better, which I think is a lot of this CBDC and central bank digital currency momentum came because they didn't want Facebook doing it, frankly.
Yeah, and that's a great point, which is you see this kind of push and pull from the regulators, on one hand trying to bring crypto into the regulatory perimeter, but on the other hand trying to create alternatives. And on that point, talking about another impossibility, it's actually it's impossible that CBDC is a substitute for cryptocurrency unless they live on the same venue. So just
CBDCs, right? Banks are going to want to tokenize deposits, but they're also going, because a lot of these banks clear payments through their central banks, okay? And they're going to want their back ends to be the same technology as the central banks, right? And when you have Ripple working with the most central banks in the globe, it does make me feel like banks are going to want to go to that blockchain, right? Maybe a private version of that blockchain to build out their back end, and that way they can be on the same technology as those central banks.
As a thought experiment, that imagine that Ethereum becomes a commerce platform and not just a place for moving NFTs and CryptoKitties and what have you, but imagine that real businesses want to use a public blockchain. Unless the CBDC is on that public blockchain, it's not a substitute. Unless the bank issued tokens are on that public blockchain, it's not a substitute. So I think we have to be very precise about what these instruments are and what utility they'll have, and much of it depends upon the venue in which they operate.
So I'm glad you mentioned the point of utility, and Roy, I'll bring you in here.
All right, let's go to the next clip here. Roy's got a lot of great points, but I don't want this video to be 30 minutes and you to click off after 2 seconds. So let's keep going, because it's just going to build. He's going to tell you exactly why banks cannot use Ethereum, the public version of Ethereum, for these transactions into digitized tokens. Will never happen, ever, until something changes within Ethereum. And I don't think Ethereum is going to change who they are for banks, period. So I just don't think they're compatible.
Existing rails, and some of them are, and I guess Citi is massive, so maybe there are some enthusiasts for let's just get faster payments, and there are some let's do it all on digital ledger. But does Citi then, as a big bank like Citi, look at both and bet on both horses and then hope that one of them comes in?
So I think you get to that answer by really examining what I call the tokenization thesis. And what is it when people are on this stage saying that in the future all financial assets will be tokenized? What are they really getting at? And before you get to that answer, you have to separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of the blockchain technology. Bitcoin as a medium of exchange? No. Going back to commodity money, Bitcoin is not a liability form of money, it's commodity money. No, and for reasons we can get into. Anonymous payments, proof of work using all this electricity, these are all no. So what's left over? And what's left over when you compare an infrastructure like Ethereum to the traditional financial system is that Ethereum is always on. It's multi-asset in a way that the traditional financial system is not. We're very siloed in traditional finance, and it's programmable. And so I think the project really is to examine this tokenization thesis and whether you can take that shared ledger technology and apply it to, and this is the key point, existing legal instruments. I think in the blockchain world where we have this idea that the code is law, that's completely wrong. Law is law. And existing legal instruments can be expressed on blockchains a lot, because at the end of the day,
I love this guy.
But is that clear? I mean, I don't know if any of you have read the...
All right, I love this guy, because they go back and forth and they have a good conversation, but we're going to get into the juicy stuff and the stuff that you're like, Sensei, can you get to it already? I forgot about the Bitcoin stuff. That was great too, right? If you're following along and you're still here, you got to love that point.
Whether a bank is outsourcing to FIS or AWS or Ethereum.
FIS Global, Ripple partner.
There's one hurdle in the ETHEREUM third-party risk management, which is essentially a 100-page questionnaire with lots and lots of questions on it. And essentially, we've got to satisfy ourselves that outsourcing can be done in a responsible manner.
Before we continue, let me just go over third party, because I'm trying to educate you here. So third party risk management, or TPR, is the process of analyzing and minimizing risks associated with outsourcing to third party vendors or service providers. There are many types of digital risks within the third party risk category. These include financial, environmental, reputational, and security risks. All right. And they also talk about the risk exists because vendors can access intellectual property, sensitive data, personal identifiable information, also known as a PI. And then you have protected health information, which is fee. All right. Because third-party relationships are vital to business operations, third-party risk management is an essential component for all cybersecurity programs. So that's what he's talking about. All right. All right. Let's get into this.
And that's a hurdle for some banks to get onto even cloud. It's a much bigger hurdle to get onto an infrastructure like Ethereum. But some people might believe that actually that's a hurdle we have to cross at some stage. But to do that, what would be required is someone demonstrates that outsourcing your record keeping to Ethereum is a responsible thing to do. And just to be very concrete on why at the moment that's difficult. If you were to ask anyone who's operating on the public blockchain like Ethereum, how do you know that you're not paying gas fees to criminals and sanctioned entities?
There it is.
You can't know.
There it is, right? They don't know that the gas fees that you're paying on Ethereum are not going to bad state or bad actors, excuse me. Sometimes bad state actors, but it sounds, no. Terrorists, right? You don't know where those gas fees are actually going. When you have something like XRP, some XRPs, a little bit of XRP is burned every time you send that transaction, right? It's not going to somebody. So that is what makes me believe it's not Bitcoin, it's not Ethereum. What else is massive in the world that was number 2 before this lawsuit and that central banks have been testing for years? That is on the ISO board, right? That is on pretty much every board that you can imagine. That SWIFT is dealt with or tested through their other partner banks. Hundreds of thousands of banks, hundreds or thousands of banks have tested this technology over the last 10 years. If it's not DLT, it's XRP, something like it, right? I just think there's so much value in what Tony is saying. And he is one of the people, he's 20 years at Citibank. This guy knows what are the technologies that can and cannot be used out here. All right, let's keep going.
Are the currency within, I know you told me before not to use jargon.
I asked. I think asked is nicer than told.
But it's a pay to play, right? So whether you're doing computation or storage on Ethereum, you have to pay gas fees.
And you could be financing terrorists for all.
And you cannot be a responsible financial institution issuing onto a public chain that ends up paying gas fees to North Korean actors. Cannot be. So the hurdle is quite clear. At the point at which these public infrastructures can meet the requirements of TPRM, then we can envisage using them at institutional scale. But that is not true at the moment.
Not true at the moment, guys. And I know what you're thinking, and I thought the same thing, right? Sensei, this is probably pre-Ethereum merge. Let's take a look at when this was recorded. This was recorded at the summit 3 months ago from today's date. This is September 23rd, 4th, something like that. This was done after the merge. This was recorded after the merge. He's talking about the current state of Ethereum. The public version of Ethereum can't be used because of this third-party risk, because they don't know where these gas fees are going. So what other technologies are out there, right? You got your Quant, you got your XDCs, and you have your XRP and your XLM. That's why we talk about it so much on this channel, because that's where I feel like this is going, and this gives me some validation in my heart that I know I'm on the right path here to my education and to educate you, okay?
Assuming that isn't true, assuming that Ethereum isn't going to change its governance to make, what's the alternative?
XRP?
Well, the alternative at the moment is private permissioned ledgers. And actually, they present quite an interesting paradigm shift from what we have today. So in today's world, let's say there are 20,000 banks in the world. Every single one of those banks has its own data center, its own ledger in that data center. And we send messages to each other through instruments like SWIFT or through networks like SWIFT. So what we're really doing with these messages is we're trying to coordinate debits and credits across lots of different items of data. On a shared ledger, essentially we've got a common computational platform, a common essentially database on which multiple entities can coordinate and orchestrate settlements. So there's even without us going to the public networks, there's still potential for us to make settlements better by all. Okay, you gotta love it, right? It's like, it's perfect, right? Did Ripple know that this guy's gonna be talking about all this stuff and just like, hey, we really need to be a sponsor at this event? No, I bet you this was all kind of good and formed, but let me finish what he's saying and then I have one more clip and then I'll get you out of here. Sorry, this tells me that banks like Citibank, Citibank is one of the biggest banks in the world, right? And they know they can't use Ethereum. So any bank, public version, so any bank they're talking to, they're like, we can't really use this, right? But maybe we can use something else, right? And sure, they're going to be on a private version and they're testing that right now, but is that going to be the final product of what they're going to use out in the world, right? Because Ethereum isn't working with central banks. And aren't banks going to want to deal with the underlying technology that all of these central banks are going to be working with? I'll pose you that question. Let's finish this up. On a shared computational substrate, like a private permissioned blockchain.
And in order to do that, do you need a level of buy-in from regulators, or is that permitted under the existing? I see, Roy, you want to take it.
I'm shaking my head because you had Matt McDermott here yesterday, I think.
All right, I'm not going to get into that because Roy's good. I may do another whole thing with just his clips because he's got a lot of good information too. Let me play this last one. I'll get you out of here.
When you think about, think about a bank that operates across borders and that deals with multiple regulators, do you just need permission from your home regulator, or do you need it from, if you want to use it to consult, to use information from the UK, the US, France, Italy, do you need to talk to all of those regulators and get sign off?
But the problem, one of the core problems that we're trying to solve in financial services is the problem of settlement. And the settlement problem is related to different islands of data and different jurisdictions. And so what we probably need to have is a multi-jurisdiction financial market infrastructure. Now these things exist. For example, there's an entity called Continuous Linked Settlement that solves for FX settlements, and it's a multi-jurisdictional financial market infrastructure. He's talking about CLS, guys, just really quickly. I don't mean to keep pausing it, but I just want to give you the backstory. CLS is navigating the FX lane. This is an FMU financial market utility like the DTCC. If you want more information on FMUs, guys, I've done a lot of videos on it. Just scroll down and I've got like 268 videos. They're definitely in there, okay? Let me just keep playing this and we'll get you out of here. That achieves settlement across different currencies. And really the potential for shared ledger technology in the traditional space is to try to solve problems of settlement use. Some people very much misdiagnose problems in, for example, cross-border payments. So you will hear some people claim that SWIFT is slow. I'm sorry, but SWIFT uses the same electrons that a blockchain uses. SWIFT is no slower than a blockchain. The messages move at the speed of light. So if you diagnose the problem that SWIFT is slow, you're missing the point. That the real issue we have to solve for is improved settlements between currencies and between different asset classes. And that's not solved by itself on a shared ledger. It's solved in a financial market infrastructure that provides that legal framework.
Guys, this is why I think one day you could see a company like Ripple being an FMU, a financial market utility. If you don't know what an FMU is, guys, financial market utility, here's some information just as you leave, just as I close the video down. Google financial market utilities, Board of Governors, the Federal Reserve. Learn something about it. Like I said, I've got a lot of information in past videos about FMUs. I hope this was helpful, guys. I'm always trying to find good little gems of information to help us understand what maybe roadblocks are put up around certain blockchains like Bitcoin, like public Ethereum, right? We don't know where those gas fees are going, so banks can't really use that. But can they use something like XRP or XLM for settlement, right? Because those are ISO compliant, the fees aren't going to a bad actor. This is what gets me motivated to wake up and make this content for you to educate you, because I think this is exciting, right? Even though he's not out here talking about XRP, it's like, man, this really sounds like he's talking about, it could be XRP, right? They're going to want, all these banks are going to be on one of the same technology or multiple technologies. It could be multiple technologies, but they're going to be on the same technology that all the central banks are on. So if we in fact see Ripple, 10 central banks, 20 central banks, 30 central banks, 40 central banks, what are you going to think that all these other banks are going to want to build their technology on? They're going to want to be on the same technology as the central banks are on. That is fact. That is almost law, right? Tony just told you he's got 20 years more experience in banking than me, probably, or you. Now, if you guys found this helpful, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 14,000 subscribers before the end of the month. I need maybe 150 more. With your help, I can get there, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.